Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I'm Josh Miller, the Assistive Technology Coordinator for Louisiana's Accessible Educational Materials Program, and we're going to talk about using visual strategies at home. Louisiana's Accessible Educational Materials Program is a project of the Special School District and the Louisiana Department of Education. And we house regional centers in Baton Rouge, Gonzales, Alexandria, Lafayette, and Minden, where we have regional facilitators that are available to help with the assistive technology or accessibility needs of students in Louisiana who require modifications or unique technology. You can visit our website at ssdla-aem.org for a little bit more information about that. You can follow us on social media on Twitter at Louisiana underscore AEM or like us on Facebook at Louisiana's Accessible Educational Materials. Today's presentation materials can be found by either scanning the QR code that's going to be on screen right now, so you can pause the video and scan that code with your mobile device, or you can follow the short link here. I've also got my email address that we can share at the end of the presentation, so you can feel free to email me with any questions or concerns, and I can just shoot you a copy of the slide deck if you need to. There's tons of links and resources. There's probably over 100 different resources that are sort of embedded in this slide deck, and those are designed to save you some time and get you started using visuals without having to necessarily buy anything special. So please get the slide deck and use the resources that are there. So today we're going to spend a little bit of time talking a little bit of overview about visual strategies and best practices. We're going to look at ways of using household items to facilitate the use of visual strategies. When schools were closed for the COVID-19 virus, there was all of a sudden a strong demand for strategies. Kids often had communication boards or they had visual schedules in the classroom. But now that these kids were going home, those schedules need to be amended and they need to reflect the activities and things that are going on at home. But parents don't necessarily have the knowledge or the software and the hardware, things that are available in the school system. So today we're going to look at some free tools. And if you have a little bit, if you have a printer, we've got a lot of different things that you can use. We're going to look at using a smartphone. So maybe all you've got access to, or someone that you're working with trying to help only has access to a smartphone. We're going to look at how you can incorporate some different applications and things that are built into the smartphones to provide some resources. And if all you've got at home is a printer, we're going to look at some stuff there because there are tons and tons and tons of free printables that have been created by our program and the facilitators who work with me at the Accessible Educational Materials Program, but also resources that I've curated from other sources. So why would you use visual strategies? Well, there's a lot of benefits, and some of them do benefit those on the autism spectrum, but all of us use visual strategies. Do you follow a schedule? How do you organize yourself? What are your priorities and needs? Most of us follow some sort of schedule or an outline. So we can imagine our schedule visually, or some of us use a digital calendar or a smartphone. I know that all of my events are saved on my calendar, and that's how I organize my day. And so, but many of us don't provide a similar tool to our learners who have a special need. And there's a benefit to research. There's tons of research into the benefits of the use of visual schedules and strategies, particularly with those on the autism spectrum. So, I mean, by using their visual strength, we can provide what's called a receptive communication strategy, a way that we can get information to them. And that's going to help their understanding. That's going to oftentimes help with behavior issues that are caused by the anxiety and the unknown. Okay. So it can help to reduce inappropriate behaviors. Individuals with autism often suffer from difficulties with sequential memory, so doing things in order, and then also with their organization of time. So the concept of having to wait for an hour, and then also transitions. We're going to talk a lot about how you can use these things in transitions to go from one activity to another, but they can also help us students who have a language comprehension issue. You can use visual schedules to, people think that they may be a crutch, but really what you're doing is you're increasing independence. You can use visual aids to help make choices. So providing a limited number of options, perhaps if too many options are available, if you've got a fussy eater at home, providing a visual choice board of options that are available and options that are appropriate is going to help reduce problematic behavior. Visual strategies can help with chores and routines. Those on the autism spectrum particularly benefit very much from a strong routine, and behavior issues may occur when that routine is broken. But it can also help manage expectations. So what is going to happen when I do X, Y, and Z? And we're going to talk about reward systems and token economies and things like that, so that they know what they're working towards and that there's a consistent pathway to get them there. Okay, so how do we get to that reward? But also identifying what their needs are, and also empowering them to express what their desires are. So providing them a way to express something that they may not otherwise be able to. Visual strategies can also help provide a sense of achievement. And so as your student performs tasks, they can see their accomplishments as charted on a reinforcement type board. Many times, the reason you're seeing problem behaviors is because the individual doesn't have the ability to determine for themselves, based on their circumstances and the cues around them. They may have trouble picking through the cues in the environment. And so that visual strategy gives them a fantastic, consistent way to reinforce them. So now we're going to dive in and we're going to start looking at some different examples of visual schedules and talk about the importance of establishing routine. We don't necessarily want to be rigid, but one beautiful thing about a visual schedule is it allows you to represent changes in the routine. Okay. And a lot of times students on that spectrum are going to feel far more empowered. So oftentimes when there is a change to a schedule, there will be problematic behavior from some of our learners because it either was not anticipated or they simply don't know how to deal with it. But by channeling that anxiety or that frustration or that problematic behavior, such as a loud outburst or maybe throwing something across the room, we can change that behavior into allowing them to physically manipulate their schedule or to visually observe the change in the schedule. And so now the routine becomes that when our schedule breaks down, we don't get upset, but rather we control it by moving our visual schedule. And there's a lot of research that shows that independence can break down behavior. And I've certainly seen it in my own career where we've introduced some type of visual strategy, some type of positive reinforcement strategy, and behaviors have changed. Okay. So we can use visual schedules to change behavior. We can use visual schedules to give information or explain. I love the use of visual strategies to teach routine and to communicate what the rules are. Okay. It adds so much structure and organization. It can eliminate distractions. It's a powerful time management tool, but also, to give them a memory support. Sometimes they may not remember what comes next, especially after a long vacation or something like that. So, it can help really organize and move forward what it is you're trying to accomplish. Okay, so we're going to look at some different things and then dive into tons of examples. And anytime that you see a blue hyperlink on the screen, you can download that file and you can print it out, or you could just have the file open on your phone and you could just use it as a visual on the phone or the tablet. If you do have a phone but you don't have access to a printer, you can just hold it up, or you could display it on your TV. You could plug the computer into the TV and have that visual strategy put on that on your television. The look, listen, look, speak was this visual I created based on the rules that I saw from a teacher that I was working with. These were her classroom rules. Before they talked, they were to open their listening ears, they were to watch carefully, and then they could talk. And so we put this visual up at the front of the classroom. And not only did it benefit the students who had problematic behaviors, but it benefited everyone in the classroom. And the visuals are going to keep other people on the same pathway too. So when you're using these things at home, if the babysitter comes over or grandma or the aunt comes over to your house, having a visual that everyone can get on board with and keep that consistency and keep that routine is really going to be one of the keys to success when you're implementing one of these strategies. We need everybody on board, okay? So, you know, looking at what the routines are and looking at what activities are happening is where you want to start. You want to know their interests, okay? So you can use a variety of symbols, but one common strategy is to go with something really high interest. So I've worked with students who were really big superhero fans. And so when we were putting together their visuals, um, we made sure that Spider-Man was the centerpiece of those visual strategies. When I worked with a younger student who was into Baby Shark, that was the reinforcer that we used on their token economy to show them what the reward was. But building those schedules and visuals around what the already occurring daily routines and interests are is a good place to start. One really important thing is to allow the child, to have a sense of ownership over the schedule. And you can do that by discussing it with him. Many of our learners, can be negotiated with and talked to about what that schedule might look like and what rewards perhaps will come at the end of it. Once you've agreed on what that schedule is going to look like, you have to model how the schedule is going to be used. And so modeling just involves you, showing them how the schedule is going to be used. And so you may complete the activity yourself, or after they complete the activity, you may physically manipulate the schedule to show them that it's completed. Or if we're talking about later a reward system where they get a credit for every positive thing they do, you in the beginning may physically put that credit in place and let them see how the reward is delivered in the beginning so that they can begin to learn the system. There are two main types of vocabulary that we use when we talk about communication as a whole, and those are core and fringe vocabulary words. And so core vocabulary refers to the most common words in the English language that get used. So I, me, turn, go, more, stop, some. You're not going to see a lot of nouns on that list, okay? So core vocabulary is not things like hamburger, french fries, soda, but rather more, want, stop. Fringe vocabulary are the other 90% of words in the English language, and words such as chicken nugget, aunt, uncle, proper nouns, all of those fit in the vocabulary of a fringe vocabulary. So when we combine these things into a unique phrase, a child indicating, we say, say, but however they indicate what it is they want to communicate, we call that a novel utterance. And a good way for you to model the use of that vocabulary is to always go one level higher or than where your learner is. So remember, they're going to help your students navigate what's unknown and predict what may come next. In the beginning, it's incumbent on us to model that and to kind of guide them through what's going to happen next until they become familiar with the strategy. And many students are going to take a strategy like this, they're going to run with it, and in short amount of time, ideally with some modeling and some consistency and some buy-in from everyone in the environment, that student may be able to handle their own visual strategy themselves. So how can we reward positive behavior? Well, we can provide affirmatives such as good job using your walking feet. We can also provide tangible reinforcers such as food or age-appropriate toys, but it has to be something that's highly motivating. And I've had a lot of luck providing choices. So instead of you deciding what the reward is, provide a choice board of appropriate things that you actually do have, so that when they complete their activity, they can be rewarded for it. Okay. But you got to teach them how to use it. You have to reinforce its use regularly. Um, sometimes some of our learners can be slow to adapt to a change like this, and some of them aren't going to tolerate a change into the schedule. But by using that visual strategy to reinforce what you're saying in a calming manner, you can give them a choice. You can, when there's a last minute change, okay, before we go to grandma's house, you get to pick out what you're going to wear. Before we go to grandma's house, we're going to go either play on the swing for 15 minutes or we're going to play a video game for 15 minutes. The choice is yours. But then after that, we're going to grandma's house. So you've changed what the behavior is for maybe running down the stairs and throwing shoes or whatever that behavior was. But you've also provided a duplicating a strategy that you can duplicate. You can do this over and over again. So we're going to dive into some examples. Pinterest is a great place where you can find tons and tons and tons of free resources. So these are different ways that you can use a folder to create a visual schedule. And so on the example on the right, some of those images are hand drawn, and in the left hand side, those images were printed, and they're using Velcro so that the symbols that are on that board can be moved around. In the example on the right, they have made flaps. So they've used scissors to cut flaps into a folder, and they've used Velcro. And on the back of the card, on the back of the cord stock of the folder, they've written the word done. And so as the student completes the activities, they can close that little flap, and they can, the word done will be displayed, and they can get a sense of accomplishment, very similar to checking something off on your to-do list on the weekends. Okay. So you don't need a printer. And if you have an artist in your house, I know, some of us do have other kids that are very creative, and they can help with this. They can put together some of these visuals for sure. So different ways that you can display those. So on the example on the left, again, we see a hand-drawn schedule, and that is just secured with a piece of string, a piece of black yarn in the upper left-hand corner. They used a hole puncher, and they've essentially made a ring of the visuals that they will use. And the way that you incorporate them is that you can you display them in conjunction with your verbal command for them to sit, or for them to, whatever command you're trying to exhibit. And a lot of times students, it's very hard to argue with a card. It's very hard to argue with something that is in front of you, a schedule. It's a lot easier to argue with a person, because a person can be bent or manipulated or changed, versus something that's actually printed out and placed on the wall, like the example on the right-hand side. So this is hung from like a curtain wire, and those are the little curtain clips that you would see. And so the schedule can be put up on there as well. These are some examples if you don't have a printer. So the instructions in the upper left-hand side are examples of how you can make a chocolate cake. And what we did is we cut out the actual visuals from the back of the chocolate cake box. So that the cake box already has actually pretty nice visual directions on there, but we reduced the English a little bit, and we made them a little bit larger. The box had English and Spanish instructions, and the font was a lot smaller, and there was like a whole lot going on, nutrition facts and things like that. And so by just cutting out the pictures and kind of simplifying just the amount of words that were on the screen, it made a much easier to follow visual schedule. They can encompass a day, an activity, or, as in the example in the bottom right corner, an entire week. You can also use sticky notes. I don't think I have an example in the actual slide deck, but you can put sticky notes in the environment and just, put them in the order that the activity is going to come. These are another example of visual directions on a cake. Okay. And this is actually from a subscription service called HelloFresh. A lot of schools, and this is evidence-based and this is in line with guidance that was put out from the Department of Education, is bringing in students into routine activities around the house. So whatever those chores are, perhaps there's a chance for them to assist at some level with some light cooking. And this subscription service called HelloFresh had really great visual strategies on there. So I incorporated these firecracker meatballs, okay, into today's presentation, just to show you that you can get creative when you begin to look around your environment. You know, when I was younger, we would cut up magazines to make our presentations, our poster boards and things like that. And you can do the same thing if you don't have a printer to cut out your visuals. Get that sales paper ad, get the used magazines that you may have lying around, and you can cut out some visuals there. But we have tons of examples linked on this slide right here. So each of these bullet points off to the right-hand side is going to give you different visual strategies that you can put into place. The one on screen right now does require a printer, and I'll tell you, you want to make sure to print this front and back, because it is intended to, so the back of that one page actually says finished on it. And so what you would do is you would cut along the dotted line there for the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, cut along that dotted line, and you would create a flap. And that the student could then use to, as they complete activities, they fold that flap over, and you can use Velcro, or you can kind of cut the paper into a fold so that the paper stays closed. And we provide you with some visuals off to the right-hand side that you can then use. Other examples, these are again designed to be folded over. So you would print this out and you would fold them over to where each of the visuals, so that break please I'm feeling would be on one side of the card, and that counter with the angry looking faces and the disappointed faces, that would be on the other side of the card. And they would then exchange it. So this is a take a break card. So they can, you know, when they're feeling like they're frustrated and they're feeling like they need to take a break from whatever the activity is, you can have them cash that in almost like a get out of jail free card in Monopoly. And they can use that to indicate that they're ready to take a break. This is an example of a reminder card. There, I've seen that when one of these visuals, one of these tactile strategies is in place, because it's a physical card, okay? So this is meant to be printed out on a piece of paper. It's very tangible, and students, learners can keep these in their pocket, or you can clip them to their clothes, to the lapel of their shirt or to their pant belt loop or something like that. And you punch a hole in the corner, of course. And as they're moving around throughout the day, that card is there, and it becomes a physical, tangible reminder of what the expectations are, even if the student can't necessarily read all the words that are on the card. You remember, we talked about modeling. You're going to model that this card means you need to be quiet. This card means, hey, we're walking quietly. And instead of making an outburst or slapping every end of the wall or jumping up and trying to slap the light switch, a lot of students can be taught to touch that card and to feel that card. And to and so what happens is, every time they interact with the card, it replaces that prompt from you, so that you're not having to remind them to be quiet. The card and the space that it occupies in their hand, in their pocket, serves as a physical reminder that it's time to be quiet. So great example there of how you can use a reminder card or a take a break the card or something physical to act as a reminder so that you don't have to do it yourself. So that card is reminding them all day long. That schedule is a reminder all day long what happens next, so that you, as the parent or as the educator, you don't have to continually prompt that learner. They're learning simultaneously to follow that schedule themselves. So those are sort of lower tech approaches. Some of them required a printer, some of them didn't. We're going to look at a few examples that I made using Google Slides. Okay, so Google Slides is kind of like PowerPoint. And if you don't use Google Slides, Microsoft PowerPoint is a really easy way that you can make visuals. And those visuals can be printed. So PowerPoints are really made to be printed a lot of times. But if you don't want to print them, you can display them on a computer. And I love the idea of having what's on the computer, or you can do it from a phone or tablet too, a lot of times, depending on your TV and your phone. But like I can AirPlay whatever's on my phone onto my TV, right? So that would be one way that you could have your visual schedule on the television. So I provided you a few samples in Google Slides, and we'll see a couple of more as we move through the presentation of, visual schedules. But one of the big, so okay, you put your visual schedule into place, but what happens in between activities? You got to have a system for transitions, and you got to stick to it. So it's all well and good to put your pictures on the wall nice and pretty, and you've made borders for them, and you've put them in order, and you've modeled, how the schedule is going to be used. But what happens in between activities? So the schedule is going to let them anticipate what's going to happen. You have to have a way that they can interact with it, and you have to have a way to kind of keep them on schedule. And some ways that you can do that is with the engaging of the schedule. So in the example off to the left hand side, they are using color coded clothespins to indicate when a particular activity is done. Okay, so each clothespin is corresponded with the color on the activity. And when it's time to transition from one activity to another, the student can add or remove their clothespin to indicate they've begun or ended a certain activity. And that then becomes an aid in the transition. So when the activity is done, we know that we need to pull our clothespin off of one station and we need to move it to another station. And that shows us that by moving the clothespin, we've given them a sense of control over what's going on. We've given them a transition strategy, and now they know where to start again because you've color coded what the activities are. But another way that you can do transitions is by using a timer. And so I'm using a timer for my presentation right now. You can use a variety of different timers. All of our phones have timers built into them. And if you've got a computer, but you can use a kitchen timer, you can use an egg timer. If you've got a voice assistant, such as Amazon Alexa or the Google Home, you can use those as not so much a visual timer. Some of them have a visual timer actually built in, but as an audio timer. But we also really like this time timer application, and you can download that on the iOS store. We gave you a link right here. The time timers were very popular in classrooms. And so the physical plastic time timer was something that you couldn't really walk into a classroom without seeing for years and years and years. And so they've transitioned now and they use an application. But a really powerful strategy is a calm down bottle. So on the right hand side of the screen is you'll see that's one of my favorite calm down bottles. I made that one, and it is a Voss water bottle that we've removed the label from, and we probably cleaned it with a little bit of Goo Gone. I don't really remember. And we filled it with glitter and a little bit of clear glue. And that clear glue makes the glitter fall to the bottom of the bottle much slower. And then we super glued the cap back on, right? You got to super glue the cap back on. I'll give you a warning. a student, a strong kid can still pull the cap off even if there is super glue. And if they're really, really, really strong, they can just break the cap right off. So do be advised of that. But really simple to make. Any of the bottles that are flat on the top and bottom make a really good candidate, because then you can shake it up and you can get all the movement of that glitter, and then you can set it down regardless of what side, up or down, and then you can watch all that glitter settle to the bottom. So I provided you a link to a video of how you can make one of these bottles over here on this slide as well. It's a powerful strategy, and a lot of times the strategy goes something like this. Hey, I see that you are having a really hard time right now. I see that you're upset. How about you take your calming bottle and you go in your chill out space, a dedicated, quiet space where whatever stressors are causing the anxiety and the problematic behavior are not present. Go into that safe space, take your calming bottle, and when all that glitter settles down at the bottom of it, I want you to come back to me and see if you can come back and we can try to, finish homeschool for the day, or we can go to grandma's house, or whatever, whatever it is that you're trying to get them to accomplish. And what's going to happen is they're going to go sit down and they're going to shake it up, and they think that they're cheating the system because they're shaking the bottle and not just letting it settle. But actually that's just giving them more time. And when they're ready to settle down, all that glitter, they'll stop shaking the bottle, all that glitter will settle down. And then again, what you've done is you've taught a strategy. So instead of being disruptive, instead of causing problems, I'm going to, independently take my calm down bottle, go into my safe space, play with the calming bottle, and then come back and join the activity. Um, I also love these apps by Touch Autism. So Touch Autism has a variety of apps, and what's really great about them is they pair a social story. So a social story has a typically repetitive text, and there is some kind of learning goal in mind. So you may see a social story about keeping, your hands to yourself. You may see a social story about wearing your COVID mask. Okay. Um, and they make a and I've had great success using one of their social stories about running inside. But Touch Autism on the Apple App Store has, for $2.99, their weight timer app. And so it's a color coded visual timer, but it also pairs with a social story about waiting patiently. So I'm a big fan of that app. I also like the time timer app. Again, these give you a visual representation. So there's different options, but essentially you can watch the time as it ticks down on those timers. So again, if you're using a smartphone, using a tablet, this company Pictillo has, now this is the same company that makes communication software, the Assistiveware company. And for $18.99, they have their Pictillo app. And Pictillo will allow you to make a story. You can record your own voice, you can take pictures, and you can take videos, and they can flip through the story with your recorded voice reading to them or without. And it helps you build a storybook, but you can also use it to build a visual schedule. So the student would be able to hear the directions being read out loud to them. They would be able to see the visuals. They would be able to manipulate the schedule for themselves. You can also use it to write a social story. So if you were going to teach them a lesson about safe hands or running or making sure they wear the COVID mask or staying away from strangers, you could put that social story in the Pictillo app. And if they have their own tablet, or if you allow them to use your phone, they're going to be able to do it. And then another way that you can make a visual schedule on the phone is with this ChoiceWorks app. So for $9.99, they have visuals that are already built in, or you can use the camera phone as well. And they have a timer that you can pair the visuals with the timer. You can create a visual schedule. They have different templates. Okay. So if you want it to read left to right, or you want it to read up and down, or you want them to be able to click when an activity is done, It's got different options like that, and you can download that on your smartphone as well. So I've linked a little video there, but you can see how they have different templates. So on the left hand side, they're giving them a choice, so a sequence of choices, and off to the right hand side, that's going to be a wait timer to get them, used to waiting for different lengths of time. Okay. So we've talked about transitions. We've talked about the importance of making schedules, time management, and sequence, and things like that. Now we're going to take a moment and we're going to talk about making choices. A lot of children struggle with making choices. It's a fundamental right, and some children don't have the same access to it as others, especially those with learning disabilities, and they may rarely experience the ability to make meaningful choices, because a lot of times those of us who are responsible for their caregiving either don't understand the importance. We think that we are helping them by taking care of things for them, and sort of organizing their life, but fundamentally choice making is a skill. And one of the ways that you can help that and also save yourself some time and frustration is through the use of choice boards and providing, relevant available choices. So you wouldn't want to make a choice board full of things that you don't have, right? You want to make sure that you have access to these things and that it's appropriate. If you're giving a kid a choice of a soda as a reward, and you keep that on the choice list consistently, you may need to be prepared to give them multiple sodas, right? Because so you want to curate what those choices are. But it can help in difficult decision making, and you can decrease opportunities for error, but you can also increase independence, okay? Um, so here's some different examples. This template is available from autismcircuit.net, and it has food choices. Food is a powerful motivator for many of our children, and food is something that now, if you are homeschooling your kid, or if they're in a blended learning environment and they're at home, they're very well maybe 2 meals and a snack that Monday through Friday you are not responsible for taking care of during the school year, that now as a parent you are having to all of a sudden provide lunch choices. I mean, at school, maybe there's one or two lunch choices, but there's not 20. Well, now all of a sudden your student with a special need is at home. Is everything in the pantry open all day long? It wasn't at my house. I had a limited number of options. So this is the same. Now this is hardly a masterpiece, but I created this out of a paper plate and a pipe cleaner that I had laying around the house. So I was when we were sent home from COVID, I was also at home, and I needed ink for my printer, but I really didn't feel comfortable going to stores. And so while I was ordering some, I needed to make this visual schedule. And so I cut out these images from the actual box. If you don't have a printer, cut up the packaging, and you can, in this case, I made it a little more interactive. I kind of hard to see in the picture, but that pipe cleaner is kind of shaped into an arrow. And so you would just manipulate whatever choice that you want. And it was sort of be like a spinner. Um, I also took this same idea of a choice board, and I made one in Google Slides. Okay, so in the previous example, we had made a very simple visual schedule. In this example, I made a very simple choice board using Google Slides, which is a free equivalent to Microsoft PowerPoint that anybody who's got a Google email account can use. And these pictures I got off of Google Images. And so I opened up Google Chrome and I searched for Legos and video games, and I just right clicked on the picture and I saved them and I brought them into this Google Slidedeck. And so the way this would work is, if you have a tablet or a touchscreen computer, the student can actually move the symbols themselves, the video game controller or the soccer ball, to let you, to indicate to you what it is that they want to do. So you say, okay, after we finish reading this story, you get a break. So do you want to play frisbee with me? Do you want to play a video game? Or do you want to build something with your Legos? And in the beginning, you would model, you would take your finger and you would move that into the yellow box to indicate that that's what the choice was. That way, when the activity's over, the student and you are clear about what is going to happen next. So you've taken all the possibilities that are in the world and you've created a limited number of choices from them. So the power of the choice board. What about using visuals to start having discussions about how we're feeling? The use of visuals is often used to eliminate problematic behavior. And emotional regulation is directly tied to that problematic behavior. So there's mixed research on emotional regulation for individuals on the autism spectrum, but it has been proven that they spend less time looking at the face of others and recognizing what those facial expressions mean. So autism often demonstrates its external signs socially. So social interaction, social cues, and researchers have termed this the hidden curriculum. So things that a lot of us learn through the natural scope of our life, such as the feelings of others, is often a real struggle for those on the autism spectrum. They have a very difficult time putting themselves in other people's positions. And this is called theory of mind. And one of the strategies that you can use to eliminate some of those social effects, or to at least give them a strategy to deal with it, is by discussing emotions. And so, a lot of the students that I've worked with, and based on the research that I've read, individuals on that autism spectrum are going to, many times, because they say if you've met one student with autism, you've met one student with autism, but many times they they're comfortable with the extreme ranges of emotion. So happy, sad, mad, those emotions they tend to understand. But sometimes there's those gray area emotions like content or upset or something like that. And those emotions often give them trouble. So engaging in those discussions and having conversations about how that individual is feeling, but also that we all have feelings. And this is how I'm feeling, is often an intervention that you can use. And so having these emotional choice boards can help engage in that conversation. So a lot of times, we have to teach the learner with autism that emotions are worn on their face and also my face. So in this example, we took there is a product that's for sale where it is masks. And so there's masks that cover the eyes and there's masks that cover the face. So two separate masks. And it is to help individuals on that spectrum understand the interaction between their facial muscles and their emotions. So you may have noticed when you get angry, we tend to think that that emotion is on our mouth, but our eyes also react to our facial expressions. And you can use a plate, or you can use the emojis like on the previous slide, or you can use the pictures of real individuals to engage in this discussion. And you can also do it in a mirror. So these are the mix and match emotion masks. Okay, so you can buy these, they're $15, and you can play a game whereby you hold up the mask and you talk about how you're feeling, or you hold up the mask and you ask the child, the student, your kid, how they're feeling. And then they can take a turn and they can hold up the mask, and you can have conversations about how the face changes, and how do you think someone's face may look when this happened. So they're trying to match the eyes to the mouth. They're trying to match their own mouth with the eyes of the mask, or trying to match their own face, their own eyes with the mouth of the mask. But you can also download an app. So you'll see a trend here. I always try to give you a DIY option, a printable option, and then like the smartphone tablet type option. And in this case, ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, there is an app online. And it used to be free. It was free for years. But as of the time I put this slide deck together, it was 99 cents, and it was really worth it. And you can take your own pictures of emotions, but there's also a diverse range of kids, adolescents, and adults making a variety of faces. So there's close-ups, there's kind of far away, there are often more than one picture. So if you want to see angry, you might be able to find a young child's face who's angry, and you might be able to find an older person's face who's angry, multiple symbols for some of the more common emotions. And for 99 cents, you can play games. So the word angry will appear on screen, and your learner has to decide which face goes along with that. So it's a really interesting tool. So this is an example of what it looks like. So mad and surprised. You can record your own voice. You can take your own pictures, or have pictures. If you've already got pictures on your phone, you can use those as well. But the app comes with 100 different emotions and pictures already there. So as we kind of move forward and get into the last little bit of our presentation, I'd like to spend some time talking about a token economy. So a token economy is a system of exchange whereby a particular behavior is rewarded. So typically there is some kind of exchange similar to money for goods. You are providing some type of coupon, token, a decorative stone, a Mardi Gras doubloon. In the example off to the right-hand side, that is actually a bottle cap. And the way that token economy works is there are different activities, such as doing your chores, cleaning your dishes, putting your books away, putting your toys away, saying goodnight, helping your little sister when she's done putting her own toys away. You get a token for each of those activities. So the bottle cap says exactly what happened. And then you count and you establish and you negotiate how many tokens does it require and what the reward is going to be. So when you get 5 bottle caps, when you do 5 positive things, and the two of you and your child decide what are those things. This is a time for you to look at what behaviors that they're doing that you want them to stop. What behaviors do you want them to do more of? Positive things. It's an example for your kid to tell you what kind of things that they're good at, because the positive things that they tell you are going to be oftentimes things in their comfort zone and things that they're willing to do. And so by giving a good variety of tasks, you can get some buy-in, but you have to teach this. You have to explain how the system works. So just like with the visual schedule, you're going to model. And in the beginning, you got to let them get the reward. It can't be this far away reward that they've never achieved, because it's going to be really hard to get them to really buy in. So maybe in the beginning, 1 or 2 tokens will get them that video game, that preferred activity. But once they've gotten that reward a few times, it's not going to be that easy. Maybe now we have to work all day, do good things all day, collect tokens all day for that reward. So you push it further and further and further out. Three things you're going to need: a list of targeted behaviors, like we talked about earlier. What are they doing that you want them to do more of? What are they doing that you want them to do less of? What are you going to do to keep track of it? It doesn't have to be a physical token. It could be a scratch on the wall. Okay. I mean, on the chalkboard or something like that, 5 hash marks, and they get a reward. It could be a scoreboard of some type that you make. And then you need what the enforcers are, providing a list of preferred items, activities, or privileges. And this is where getting that interaction is critical. You've got to bring in your child so that their reward is something meaningful to them. In the beginning, reward small accomplishments, but quickly build up. And you're going to want to add more steps over the time to make it more rigorous to get the reward. So if you have access to a printer, I've got a ton of templates available. Um, Goal of the week, what I'm working for type things are available here on the slide deck. Once again, I went and made one for you in Google Slides. So in this example, the lightning bolts would be drug into the little blue box. When all 4 of the lightning bolts occupy all 4 of the boxes, you get Spider-Man. So in this case, it was like a Spider-Man toy that the kid wanted to play with. And the tokens are these digital lightning bolts. Okay. So I know that that was a lot of information that went very quickly. I'm always available to answer questions at josh@ssdla-aem.org. Or you can visit our website, www.ssdla-aem.org. We're going to take a moment and go through some of the extended resources that I have at the end of the presentation. But in closing, I just want to say that there's a lot of research in the use of visual strategies, and they're a powerful reinforcement tool that can save you a lot of time and a lot of frustration. But it has to be taught. It's a skill. And so you can't assume that a child will automatically understand the use and routine of a schedule without your guidance. You have to make those connections, and sometimes it happens very slowly, between those abstract pictures and cards and words and what happens in the real world. And you have to teach them that they have a role in making sure that what they want out of it can be achieved. So they have a chance to pick what their preferred rewards are. Pairing that visual cue with a simple verbal label can be useful. So as you're teaching the visual strategy, talk them through, okay, we're finishing this activity. Now we're going to start this other one. You have 3 tokens left until you get your Spider-Man reward. And remember that the schedule can be flexible. And in fact, the aha moment that I had using visual schedules is I was working with a teacher, and they expressed to me that they liked the visual schedule, but the student was so concrete in the use of that schedule that when something deviated from the schedule, there was a behavior breakdown. And that teacher and I had a conversation where I expressed to her that this was an opportunity for her to use the visual schedule to express the change in that behavior and to have a conversation with the student, with her child, about the transition and the change to the schedule and changing the behavior away from that student, becoming upset about what happened, and changing that behavior into having a sense of empowerment, because now when something happened, that student that would freak out became the one that would change the schedule for the whole class. So it went from being a negative behavior to something very positive, something very powerful. This student who, was exhibiting a maladaptive behavior is now identifying and doing a very beneficial behavior and actually managing the schedule for the whole class. So I think those things are important to keep in mind. Again, you can follow us on Twitter at Louisiana_AEM, or you can like us on Facebook at Louisiana's Accessible Educational Materials. We do have a few resources that I'm going to go through really quickly. So this is what we call our Visual Supports Toolbox. And the Visual Supports Toolbox is going to have tons and tons of examples. So let's just take a few moments and take a look at some of the visuals that we have. So here's some schedules. So let's take a look. We have a circle time checklist that you can just print out. We've got a daily, it's like a school schedule right there. We've got another different schedule. Let's take a look at some of our calm downs and reflections. How are you feeling today? What will you do next time? All these visuals, again, are available for you to print. We've also got a variety of social stories. So if you want to incorporate the visuals and the social stories, this one's about brushing teeth. So as you can see, the visuals are paired with the language at the bottom. And so this is a powerful visual strategy. This can help teach vocabulary. This can help teach literacy, but then also those symbols are going to be the same symbols that if this student uses a communication device, many of the symbols are going to be there. Or if they use the unique learning or the news to you curriculum, they're going to see the consistent symbols there. So not only are the visuals powerful to develop routines and for behavior modification and scheduling strategies, but they can also be used to, bring in a lot of content and communication as well. So we've got a variety of social stories that you can use here. This is a fire alarm, getting mad. Sometimes I get mad. Sometimes I want to hit or kick, but that's not okay. And so we're going to use a social story to teach about it. So that is our whole folder. That's the Visual Support Toolbox from the AEM team. We also linked to Autism Speaks, Ocali. They have tons and tons and tons of visual resources. We are going to take a look at our live binder of visual schedules and social stories. This live binder was created by the AIM centers as well. But we've also brought in a presentation by Linda Dobson and then Carol Gray. If you've not heard of Carol Gray is, it's got a long history of developing social stories, and her website has dozens and dozens of them. But in closing, I just want to take a moment and look at this live binder. There are some resources on this live binder that may not be in the presentation, and there's some that are. So if you've not used live binders before, live binders is a great online sort of filing cabinet for you to put all your digital resources. Okay, so for free, you can have up to 5 live binders, and these color-coded tabs at the top can have subtabs. So up here you see purple, orange, pink. As I click on each of these green subtabs in the bottom bring me to other websites. So when we talked about social stories in the presentation, I went ahead and linked to all of the different websites of the products that I demonstrated. I also went ahead and linked to other places where you can find resources such as Victory in Autism, the Touch Autism website, Autism Speaks, and things like that. So tons of different resources there for you to explore on your own. Okay, so if you've not ever used a live binder before, I highly encourage you, if you need to collect your online resources somewhere that is just a little more visually appealing than a Google Drive or a Dropbox folder, and you don't have your own website, live binders is a fantastic choice. So With that, I'll leave you on this slide. Thank you so much for sitting through my presentation for 1 hour. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much.